Oh, am I wrong? Nope, 42A. So last thing we said was that the tzitz has to hang over, right? It's within 3 finger breadths of the end. And then we saw a picture that it hangs over on the side and goes down by the corner ideally. So we have 2 statements. We had a statement on the previous page of 41B that talked about that it has to be within 3 finger breadths. And then we also had another statement that it has to be the distance of 1 thumb to the end of the nail away, meaning when you put your thumb at the end of the garment, so it's 1 thumb's breadth up. So says the Gemara, I need both of those statements. The Itzrich Rav Papa, the Itzrich Rav Yaakov, Dimon Rav Papa, Havamina Tok Shalosh Lo Lircha Tvei. I only had Rav Papa from the previous page. I would have thought that 3 finger breadths and no more. The Kama Dimikarev Mali, but as close as you want to make it, it's good. So for that, Itzrich Rav Yaakov, that no, not too close, 1 finger breadth away. Even the Rav Yaakov, who says 1 finger breadth away, Havamina Mali Kasher Gadol, Malo Kasher Gadol Doli Karev Tvei. The Kama Derachik Mali. You would have thought that, yes, it has to be 1 finger breadth away, but maybe the farther away it is, the better. So to that, you need both statements. It has to be within 3 finger breadths, but 1 thumb breadth away. Choose you to where we are or no? Here. Right there. Ravina v'Rav Sama have Yasvik Hamid Rav Ashi. Ravina and Rav Sama were staying by Rav Ashi. Chazi Rav Sama lekarni deglime de Ravina the Sasa Rabata v'Malik Kasher Gudal. So they were sitting by Rav Ashi. Now Chazi Rav Sama, so they saw that Rav Sama lekarni deglime on the corner of his garment. Chazi Rav Sama lekarni deglime de Ravina. Rav Sama saw the garment of Ravina. The Sasa Ubatzer v'Malik Kasher Gudal. That it sounds like it wasn't this finger breadths away. It was the strings were much closer to the end. So Amar Le Lo Savar Lamar Lo Hadar Rav Yaakov. Do you not hold what Rav Yaakov just told us? That you have to have it a finger breadth away, a thumb breadth away from the corner, and your strings are much closer to the end. So he told him Amar Le Bishas Asiyat Mar. That was when you're making it. When you're making the tzitzis, you should ideally have it a thumb breadth away. Mine slipped down. And since it slipped down, so maybe it's not the best thing, I don't know, but therefore it's not a problem. So, however, he was iksif. He got a little embarrassed. He was attacked pretty harshly. He's attacked pretty harshly about his tzitzis. So, yeah, he got a little embarrassed. So, he was consoled. Amar Rav Ashi, lo taskiflach chad minayu kitrei minan. Don't be so embarrassed that one of us is like 2 of them, meaning one from Eretz Yisrael, one person from Eretz Yisrael is equivalent to 2 of them. So you shouldn't be so embarrassed. Don't worry, we're from Eretz Yisrael. So the Gemara says that the Gemara says that Avir Eretz Yisrael Machkim, that the air of Israel makes somebody smarter. So Rav Dessler, who was the Rav in Gateshead Yeshiva, and then a rabbi in Panovich and Bnei Brak, he says it took him 6-7 hours to prepare a lecture in England. Took him much less in Eretz Yisrael. So one of them is like 2 of them. One of Eretz Yisrael is like 2 people in the exile. So don't feel so bad. We're good. Rav Acha Bar Yaakov. So now, how did different opinions how they put their tzitzit strings into their garment? So Rav Acha Bar Yaakov, Rami Arba, what he did was he had 4 strings. The ayif lahu miyayif, and he would fold them over into 8. And then umaya lahu beglima. So he had 4 strings, folded into 8, and then he put the 8 through the garment. The avik lahu mevak, and then afterwards he'd make them into like some kind of slip knot. And then at some point he had a real knot. But the point is that he put 8 strings, 4 folded over into 8, and put that through the hole. So kasavar be'inan tamya beglima. Obviously, he holds you have to put 8 into your garment. Ki heichidil havi gdil gdilim b'makom psil. The Torah says gdilim and it says psil. So gdil is the thread and psil is the gdil is the gdil is the braids and psil is the thread. So the braids you need more than one because one thread doesn't make the braid. So that's at least 2. So Gedil is 2, and then Gedilim is 4, and then you have to fold it over and put it in. So he got 8 because he was strict for the language of the Torah that it says Gedilim, he according to him it means 8 strings. And therefore he put an 8 in the place of the corner. So he put 8 strings in. Yeah. Rav Yirmiyah midifti Rami Tamya, the inhu shitzar v'lo. He took 8 strings, put it through, and then when he let it down, it was 16, and then he didn't knot it up yet. So he put 8 through, then folded them over, and got 16. Mar braid Ravina other kididon. Mar, the son of Ravina, did like we do, where you put 4 strings through, and then when it hangs over, now it's 8 strings, and then you knot it up. Rav Nachman Eshkeler Rav Ada bar Ava Rami Chute become a varich. Oh, so Rav Nachman found Rav Ada bar Ava that what happened? He would Rami Chute, he would put tzitzis on his garment. So, and what would he do? Become a varich. Lasos tzitzis. He'd make a blessing on the making of the tzitzis. So now, Rav Nachman goes, Amalei, my tzitzis shamanu. What's that tzitzis that I hear? Someone's making a bracha on the tzitzis. What is that I hear? So my tzitzis shamanu aki. So my tzitzis shamanu. So Hakam Rav tzitzis ain't tzricha bracha. Rav, we have Rav on the books of saying tzitzis does not require a blessing. So that's where Rav Nachman held. So now, Kinoach Nafshe de Rav Huna, when Rav Huna was passing away, all Rav Chisda lemirma de Rav de Rav. Rav Chisda entered and asked a contradiction of one statement of Rav to the other statement of Rav, which was as follows: Umiyav Rav tzitzis aim tzrichas bracha. Is that really true that Rav holds that tzitzis don't need a bracha? V'ha Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. So we have Rav Yehuda in the name of Rav. Minayin letzitzis be'ovid kochavim sheipsula. How do you know that if an idol worshiper, and I think the same goes for a non-Jew, makes your tzitzis, it's going to be invalid? We'll see. It's 2 opinions, but for now, we hold it's invalid. Shenemar daber al bnei Yisrael the asulahem tzitzis. So he says they should make for you tzitzis, meaning bnei Yisrael yasu. The Jews, they should make for you tzitzis. V'lo ha'ovdei kochavim yasu, and not the idol worshippers. So right now we think we have a contradiction. On the one hand, Rav says that you don't make a bracha on the tzitzis. On the other hand, we have Rav saying that an idol worshiper can't make tzitzis for you. So that's supposed to be a contradiction. So says the Gemara, what's the contradiction? I don't hear a contradiction. I hear 2 statements. Rav Yosef, like this: Rav Chisda, when Rav Huna was dying, so Rav Chisda came in, and Rav Chisda asked a contradiction in Rav. So now the question is, what did Rav Chisda think? He assumed that this is a contradiction. You don't need a bracha. At the same time, an idol worshiper can't make your tzitzis. So what was Rav Chisda's rationale? So Rav Yosef tries to defend Rav Chisda, who's saying this over in the name of Rav. Okay. Kol mitzvah shekshera ba'obed kochavim b'Yisrael ein tzarich levarich. So maybe Rav Chisda holds as follows: any commandment that a non-Jew can do, a Jew ein tzarich levarich does not need to make a bracha. Interesting. Kol mitzvah shepsula ba'obed kochavim. Anything that a non-Jew cannot do, it's invalid for him to do for a Jew. So then b'Yisrael tzarich levarich. That's the rationale. Now, what exactly the rationale? I'm not sure exactly. But somehow our blessing on the mitzvah will be dependent on, can a non-Jew do it for us or not? If he cannot do it, then we make a bracha. I guess the reason being is because the bracha is saying that we were sanctified in this mitzvah. So if a non-Jew can't do it, you see that distinction clearer. A non-Jew could do it. Even though when the non-Jew is doing it, he's not doing it for himself, he's doing it for you. But still, you want to say Asher Kiddushanu, there's a specific command for me and only me to do and nobody else, so that would get a bracha. So now, says the Gemara, is that really such a rule? I'll show you that by bris milah, if you're stuck, a non-Jew can do it for you, and yet we still make a bracha, ala milah. So I'll show you that that can't be the rationale. So, v'klalahu v'harei milah v'ksherim bovet kochavim, milah is kosher by a non-Jew, the time ir she'ein barofe Yisrael v'yesh barofe aramai, v'rofe kuti. The Brisa says, and we'll see it's also different opinions, but a city that has no Jewish doctor, but it has an Aramean doctor, or it has a Kutian doctor, what do? Gimel Aramai v'al Gimel Kuti. The Aramean can do the bris milah, but the Kuti cannot do the bris milah. That's according to Rav Meir. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Kuti v'lo Aramai. The other way, a Kuti and not Aramai. Now, I think according to Rav Meir, so meaning the Aramean is for sure idol worshiper. Kutim is a machlok if they were good converts or not. I think Kutim here has. So the Arameans don't circumcise their kids.
So they want to circumcise in the name of their.
Yes, that's why he'd rather have an Aramean do it.
Because they've got no vested interest in circumcision.
On the other hand, the other opinion is going to hold. I don't want an idol worshiper, a pagan person doing the bris milah. Why? They do have vested interest? I don't know. Okay. But either way, ubi Yisroel tzarich levarich. But when the Jew does it, you still make a bracha. The Amar Mar, Hamol, the one who does the bris milah, Omer, he says, Baruch Asher Kiddishanu b'mitzvah v'tzivanu al hamila. You make the blessing on the bris milah. So, okay, so that can't be the rationale. So says the Gemara, Midihu taima ela l'Rav. But Rav mifsal pasal. I said, I don't understand. This whole contradiction is for Rav. And you answered really according to Rav, that Rav Chisda held in the name of Rav, that any mitzvah that a non-Jew can't do, we would make a bracha on it. And then you're bringing me a question from bris milah that a non-Jew could do it, and you still make a bracha. But Rav holds a non-Jew can make a bris milah for a Jew. He cannot do it. So your whole question is for Rav, but Rav himself doesn't agree that a bris milah can be done by a non-Jew. So it's not a question. How do we know that Rav says that? The Itmar, it says, how do I know that if a non-Jew does a bris milah, it's going to be invalid? So two opinions. Daru bar Papa Mishmei Rav. Rav Papa said in the name of Rav, Amar Ba'ataz, Brisi Tishmor. It says, and you should keep the covenant. Only the people in the covenant are the ones that are shaykh, the ones that have to do with bris milah. If you're not in the covenant, so you can't partake. Rabbi Yochanan says, the verse says, Himo Yimo, a double language, that Himo Yimo tells you that only one who is commanded in a bris milah can give a bris milah. Someone who's not commanded in getting a bris milah can't give a bris milah. I think that's the... so either way, we see that really Rav Chisda, according to Rav Yosef's understanding of Rav Chisda's contradiction in Rav, really we're good to go, because Rav himself holds that a bris milah cannot be done by a non-Jew. So right now our rule stays true. Any commandment that a non-Jew cannot do for you, so then you make a bracha. If he could do it, you don't make a bracha. So now, Sukkah misayele tefillin havei tiyufte. The halachas of Sukkah are going to be a support to you, while the laws of tefillin are going to be a rejection. Okay, let's see. So, Hare Sukkah diksheira b'obed kochavim. Sukkah is valid. If a non-Jew builds a sukkah, it's going to be valid. And yet, we don't make a bracha la'asos sukkah. You make a bracha le'shev b'sukkah. You're living in a sukkah. You're dwelling in a sukkah, but you don't make a bracha la'asos sukkah. Oh, so that's a good proof. A non-Jew does it for you, so you don't make a bracha on the doing. Now, how do I know a non-Jew can build a sukkah? The Tanya, so it's called a sukkah's ganbach. It's called ganbach, goyim, noshim, behema, and kutim. So sukkahs ovdei kochavim, a sukkah of a non-Jew. Sukkahs noshim of if a woman makes a sukkah. Sukkahs behema if you not if an animal makes a sukkah. If you make it for your animals. By the way, the first time it's mentioned in Torah, the word sukkah is by Yaakov Avinu, and it says ulamakneu asa sukkos. He made for his cattle, his livestock, he made sukkos booths. Some say, and therefore the town was called Sukkos. So there's a deeper explanation, but there's one simple explanation. I think the Or Chaim says this is the first time someone took care of the animals like that, for the special house for the animals. See, we do like animals in Judaism. So sukkahs kutim and a sukkah made by the kutin are all going to be sukkah mikol makom. It's still considered a sukkah mikol makom sheira, as long as long as it is made according to halacha properly. But the fact that they make it is not going to be a problem. And yet, ubi Yisrael in tzarich levarich. A Jew doesn't make a bracha lasso sukkah. How do I know the Tanya? It's a sukkah latzmo. Omer bracha Hashem lakin melech olam. Shechianu v'giman v'yenu l'zman hazeh. You make a shechianu. Ba leisheba omer bracha Hashem lakin melech olam. Asher kedushanim mitzvah v'tzivanu leisheba sukkah. You make a blessing leisheba sukkah. Ve'ilu lasso sukkah lo mavarich. But to make the sukkah, you don't make a blessing. Now, I think the Yerushalmi says you do make a blessing. Now, without this Gemara, I think the Yerushalmi says that you do make a blessing. And therefore, when we make the simple reason without this Gemara why you wouldn't make a bracha is because it's something called a hechsher mitzvah. I think we're going to see this later on. Hechsher mitzvah means it's a preparatory step for making for the mitzvah. The mitzvah is living in the sukkah, not building in the sukkah. That would be a reason why you would not make the bracha. There's the Gemara in Menachos that basically calls building a sukkah mitzvah. So that's where some say you should make a bracha on building the sukkah. But our Gemara is a whole new thing. That you don't make a bracha because a non-Jew can do it for you. That's like a whole new light on the whole debate. So that's a support. Tefillin to Yufteh. Tefillin is going to be an attack. Why? Hare tefillin dipsus chavim. Tefillin right now we're assuming that a non-Jew cannot make it for you. The Tanya B'china braid the Rava, turning the page. Long pages, yeah. So Mifarshinya, he explained as follows. He was from the place Parshanya, and he says as follows: Sefer Torah, so a Torah scroll, tefillin, mezuzos, shekasvan. So our Gemara says stuki. Yeah, so stuki is what our printing has, but they what it really was an apostate, but the censor took it out. The newer Gemaras, they tell you what the censor took out. There's a number of things that when they printed it, they had to leave out. A lot of Gemaras about Jesus was also left out. But now in the new Gemaras, the 21st century, on the sides, they fill you in. So Tzeduki really referred to an apostate. So if he wrote that, or if a kuti or kochavim, or an avid isha v'katan, or a servant, a woman, or a minor, or a mumar, someone who's rejects Judaism. So psulin, that tefillin is invalid. It's not valid tefillin. So shinamar, how do I know? What's the source? Ukshartem uksaftem, tying and writing. Kol sheyesh no b'kshiri yesh no b'ksiva. Kol sheyesh no b'kshiri no b'ksiva. Whoever has to bind it on their arms has to write it. Whoever doesn't bind on their arms doesn't write it. So all those people on the list are not included in the bindings, so they're not included in the writing either. Okay, Ubi Yisrael ain't tzarich levarich. So what do you see? A non-Jew can't do it for you, and yet by a Jew we don't say you make a bracha lasos tefillin. We don't do that. So that's a problem. I just told you that a non-Jew cannot do it, and yet a Jew does not make a blessing. That goes against your explanation. The shalach. How do I know that we don't make that blessing? The shalach Rabbi Kia braid the Rav Huna. Mishmei Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yochanan. Al tefillin she had omer bracha asher kedishanu. B'mitzvos v'tzivanu lahaniach tefillin and al tefillin shel rosh bracha asher kedishanu mitzvah v'tzivanu al mitzvahs tefillin. These are the blessings you make. You put on your arm by placing them. You make a blessing of placing the tefillin on, and on your head you make a blessing of on the mitzvah of tefillin. But ilu lasos tefillin lo mevarech. The making of tefillin is not going to be that we're not going to do. Elalav hainu time. So one sec. So we just rejected your whole premise that the contradiction from Rav Chisda, the name of Rav, was dependent on the fact that if a non-Jew can't do it for you, you do make a bracha. So we're just proving that's not true, because a non-Jew cannot make the tefillin for you, and you still do not make a bracha. Now, what is the reason behind all these things that we don't make brachas for? Elav hainu taima, as follows. Kol mitzvah, das yasa gemar mitzvah, kigon mila, like mila, that when the doing is the completion of the mitzvah. So then, afal gav diksherab, even though a non-Jew could do it for you, be Yisrael tzarich levarach, you make a blessing on the completion of the mitzvah. The kol mitzvah das yasa lav gemar mitzvah, kigon tefillin. The making of tefillin is not the completion of the mitzvah. When is the mitzvah complete? When you put it on your arm, when you put it on your head. That's what Hashem wants, not just to have a black box sitting in your house. You got to put it on your arm. So, afal gav de psulos, even though it's invalid, but be Yisrael ein tzarich levarich. So that's the rule of thumb: is when what you're doing is the final step, you make a blessing. When what you're doing is not the final step, then you would not make a blessing. That's why the Gemara says in the Dharam that the Jews lost the temple and were kicked out of Israel into exile because they didn't make a blessing on learning Torah. That's what it says. So some explain why, based on this Gemara, and some explain they viewed Torah as just what should I do and not do, but they didn't view it as a way to develop a relation with Hashem, with Him, just for the sake of learning, not for the sake of doing. So that's why they didn't make a blessing, because you only make a blessing on the final step. So just the learning wasn't the final step in their eyes. So, but they were incorrect, that the learning itself was the final step. So, okay. Now, but tzitzis is going to be a debate. The Hakamiflagi, Mar Savar. So, two opinions by tzitzis. Do you make a blessing when you put the tzitzis on? When you put the tzitzis on the garment, would you make a blessing or not? So, what is that? What are those two opinions about? Mar Savar Chovas Talis, Mar Savar Chovas Gavra. So, very simple. The one who holds that the obligation is on the garment and not on the person, when you put it on the garment, that's the completion of the mitzvah. If you hold the obligation on the garment itself requires the tzitzis, so you put it on. But if you hold that it's an obligation on the person, I have to wear tzitzis, so putting the strings on is only a preparatory step until you actually put it on yourself. And that's why you only make the blessing when you put it on. Umar Savar Chovas Gavrahu, Amrli Rav Morcha Ravashi. So asun hakimas nisula. Okay, that's how you guys taught this. However, on hakimas nisula, we had a different version of Rav. Amar Vidam Rav. Minayin letzitzis b'avukachavim sheira. How do I know that tzitzis made by a non-Jew is going to be valid? Shenamar daber b'nei Yisrael v'asulam tzitzis yasam acherim. Now, like we said earlier, we learned. Rav Yudah says in the name of Rav, when Hashem said daber b'nei Yisrael v'asulam, this is that they should make for them tzitzis. It means it should be made by other people, or at least it could be made by other people. It doesn't have to be made by Jews. It can be made by non-Jews also. Okay. Yeah. Okay, fine. Now, Amr, next part. A whole bunch of different materials now, so you'll help me out. Amr Rabbi Yehuda Rav, asal mina kotzim mina nimin mina grodin psula. So the common denominator, these are all things that are like threads at the end of the garment. So the kotzin are two explanations, but one of them is that they're like the little threads that stick out after you knot it. They protrude a little bit. So that's one. Thorn-like things that protrude. Yeah. Why are they thorn-like? Some kind of thorn-like thread that stick out. Okay, you have to ask. Okay, and then you have the Neiman. These are the ones that hang off the end. The small little ones that hang off the end after sewing. And then you have Grodin. So Grodin is a Prinish in Old French, if that helps anybody. So also ones that seem to hang off the ends on some level. I'm not sure exactly the difference between. What do you say? The warp threads. The warp as opposed to the whoop threads. Okay, Don will send me a picture today. The whoop threads and the warp threads, and I don't know. I feel warped just thinking about this. Okay, so however, those are all invalid. Min hasisin kshera. However, min hasisin are kshera. How the chance of min hasisin? Regular threads, regular weaving balls of thread, those threads are fine. Now the reason is because that these threads, when you put them on, so they're like the afterthought. So you didn't put them on with the intention for tzitzis, what we call lishma, having the right intention. Rather, they were like leftover, the afterthought, they're hanging off. The shirayim, okay, leftovers, well, you're getting very Hasidim like shirayim. I'm just saying they like leftovers. The Rebbe's leftovers, so you have to know. So sisin though, the sisin are the original woven thread that you put with it. Oh, that the vodka, actual vodka. So the sisin are the original thread that you put on lishma. That when you put on, you have the right intention in mind, no problem. Now, ki amrisa kamei shmu amar af min sisin psula. So he says a novelty. Even those threads, when you put them on for the right intention, it's still invalid. Why? But inan tvia lishma. You have to weave it. The original thread has to be lishma. Has to be woven lishma. When you're making the threads themselves, you have to make it now for the right intention. So there's two opinions. Do you have to make the actual thread for the right intention, or no? You can buy the thread from China, Home Depot. We don't care where you buy it from. When you put it on the garment, you have to do it lishma. That's two opinions. I mean, this opinion, you have to weave it. That's some holy tzitzis you have, right? Every step was wove exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So, kit. By the way, that's the partial reference by the Mishkan. They say by the Mishkan, the tabernacle, every single thing was exactly for the right from the beginning. Every single part of it. They say the same thing happened when they built the Voloshin Yeshiva. It was 100% totally the Shema, and Rav Chaim Voloshin would cry. He would shed tears that he should keep the yeshiva. He should keep himself in a state where he's doing the yeshiva only for the right reasons, not a little bit of honor for himself, nothing. He would cry about it. He should stay in a holy state. That there should be no part of the yeshiva should have any personal honor for himself, nothing, just for the sake of holiness. Okay. This idea is actually machlokas earlier than Rav and Shmuel. Rather, it's a machlokas in the Tanai. Tzipan zahav. So you have now tefillin that you coat it with gold, or shetolalein or behema tmeya, or you cover it with leather from a non-kosher animal. Thank you, psulos. That's going to be invalid. However, or behema tehorik sheros the afal pishul ibn lishma, the leather from a kosher animal that was not tanned for the reasons of tefillin. It was tanned for, I don't know, for your carpet. Then you cut out a piece and you put it on top of your tefillin. So that's fine. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, no, until your tefillin, you take that leather of the animal and you tan it, smoothen it out for the tefillin purpose. It's going to be invalid. Amalei Abai of Shmuel bar Rav Yehuda. So Abai said to Shmuel, son of Rav Yehuda, ha techilta. Okay, here now to techelas, the blue, or whatever color it is. Yeah. Ha techilta ehechi tzavisula. So how did they exactly dye their thread blue? So Amalei. Okay, now you got there's gonna be some materials here that are interesting. Amalei ma'asinan dam chilas. First of all, give me the blood of this some kind of snail, which we'll see more about in about a daf and a half. So ma'asinan dam chilazon, the salmonin, and bring me the dyes. Veramina lehu biyora. So and put it into a pot. And cook it up. Boil it up. Then the shakil napurta bibiyasa. It sounds like you take a little bit of the dye and you're putting into an eggshell. And now vitamina lahu bo'odra. You take a little bit of the dye in the eggshell and putting it on the wool. Vitamina lahu bo'odra. You put it on the wool. Vishadina le lahu biasa. And now what? And now you're throwing the wool. Yeah, so tamina lo be'udra is you put it onto some kind of wool to see if it stayed, and then sorry, so that's that, and now you see it. Now afterwards, what do? Shadina leila halbi, that egg the egg shell that you had the dye in, which from there you took and put on the wool, you throw it out. Vikalina leila udra, and you burn the wool, So we're going to be worried that people are going to use this dye for other things. So let's see. So Shema Mina, three things. Shema Mina tlat. Shema Mina, three things. Shema Mina, I learned from here, Te'ima psula, that the testing out is that you test it onto the wool is invalid because you burnt the whole wool. I also learned Shema Mina di ba'inan tzviya l'shma, that you have to dye it for the right reasons. And this dye was just for testing, and therefore you had to get rid of it. The Shema Mina, the dyeing has to be for the right reason. This Shema Mina, that Te'ima pasla, that it says, that sounds like the dyeing that did was invalid. It says the Gemara, Hainu Te'ima psula, Hainu Tzvi l'shma. That those last two are the same thing. That the dyeing has to be for the right reasons. If you're for the wrong reasons, it's going to be invalid. It's just two ways of saying the same thing. Amar Rashi, you're right. It's matam kamer. It means what's the reason? It wasn't two different things. It was matam te'ima psula. What's the reason that testing is invalid? Because you need mishum deba'inan tziyah l'shma. Because you need dyeing for the right intention. Kitanoi. This is a machlokas tanoim te'ima psula mishum shenamar kalil techeles de Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel. That the testing is going to be invalid because you need it to be kalil techeles. You need it to be that the whole thing has to be dyed from the chilazon. You can't have that part of the dye went to be tested and part of the dye went on to tzitzis. The whole thing has to be for the tzitzis. That's Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel. Rabbi Yochanan ben the Havai Omer afilu mare sheni sheba kasher. He said no. Even your second wool that you dyed with this dye, the first one you dyed maybe was testing it. The second one you want to use for your the wool for your tzitzis, that's fine. It doesn't require this. A requirement of the whole thing has to be dyed. All the dye has to be for the wool, and therefore there's no testing. No. So Bishum Shnamar Vishani Tolas. This is actually in this week's parasha. So Tolas Shani is really referring to red. I believe it's referring to red. However, the Gemara understands that it means sheni, the sheni tolas, that even the second kind of wool, and in that verse, it's compared to the cheles. It says, you make the bracelet of the Kohen Gadol, zahav techeles va'argaman tolas shani. So the techeles is compared to the red wool. The red wool, the word shani can also be read as sheni, and therefore even the second wool that you use is going to be kosher. Okay. Taner Rabbanan says the Brisa, Techeles ein la bedika. So Techeles, right now we're assuming there's no way to check it. Is it real Techeles or it says Kala Ilan, that's fake indigo Techeles kind of thing? No way to check. That's what we're assuming right now. So the ein nikhes element amumcha. You only can buy it from an expert. Yeah, you can't test it yourself. You got to go to experts to get it. Tefillin yesh la bedika. Tefillin, you're able to check if it's missing letters or adding letters. That you could check. But still, the ein nikach an element amumcha. But still, you should only buy it from an expert. So Rashi explains why. Because those tanned for the right reason. The letters missing or not, you can figure out yourself. However, the actual tanning for the right reason, that only the experts is going to be able to figure out. Now, Sfarim u'mezuzos yesh lam bedika. So Sfarim, Sifrei Torah, mezuzos, you could check. And those v'nikin mikol adam. That anybody, you can buy from anybody, because there's no requirement. It has to be, the leather has to be tanned for the right reasons. Okay. Says the Gemara, but Techeles ein la bedika. Techeles has no checking. What does that mean? Rav Yitzchak Breder of Yehuda Padiklei, he did check it. So what did he do? So the simon is begeshem. in the rain. So here we go. Different materials. Maisi, he brought Magba, Migbia Gila. Yeah, what is it? Halam? Yeah, Rashi has Alam too. That helps us. So everyone knows what Alam is? No. Yeah, we don't know. So Maya Dishabalisa, Mayim that comes from the what? Fenugreek. Okay, good. We all know what that is too. Fine. But that's a certain spice, no? That's fenugreek. Things that you have at your Pesach. Got it. Okay. Fenugreek. So, and then this is the most interesting for some people. Element straw, fenugreek, umeme raglaim ben arbaim yom. Urine that's been there for 40 days. Rashi says either the urine of a child that's 40 days old, or it sounds like just it's been 40 days since you since it left the body. It sounds like anyone's body. So 40-day-old urine. So and now vitari la begavayu meorta ve'ad letzafra. So now what do? You put it all together, right? In these things from evening till morning, and then you see as follows. Ifrat chazuse, so then it's psula. If it's getting fading away this color, so that's going to be invalid. Lo ifrat chazuse, then it's going to be shera. Then it's going to be valid. So you see, you can check it. What do you mean? Get your alum, fenugreek, and urine, and you're good to go. What's the problem? So V'Rav Ada Kamei the Rav Mishmei the Rav Avira Amar Maisi Chamira Arkasa Disare the Apila Begave. So and if Ishtane Lemal Yusak Shera and Ligriyusa Psula. So he says, sounds like another system. Chamra Arkasa. So if you take very hard yeast and you take very hard yeast. And the apele begave, and what do? You put it with the techelis? No, with techelis.
Yeah, I guess the techelis is inside.
Okay, and now you look if it improved, and so that's great. And if it changed for the good, it's good. Change for the bad, it's not good. Techelis. The simanik and the sign for this is shinui sheker. Shinui emes, that if you change your word, for the good, then you're allowed to lie. You're changing it for the bad, so to bad mouth somebody, then you're not allowed to lie. So, yeah. So what did it mean earlier? My ain la bedika. So what do you mean you can't check it? We just gave you two good methods. Yeah, for science class, you can try this at home. My ain la bedika. Na medika amar. Te'ima. What it meant is that it's hard to know if you can't check if it was dyed for the right reason or not. Just because you found the right color on the wool, but who says it was put on there for the right reasons? That you're not able to check. Was it the thread really testing thread? Was it done for the mitzvah? That you can't do. Yeah. Okay, we'll stop here. No, we're not passing it.
No passing here.
No, because I think we hold only putting on the beggar is as usual. Not the original.